Welcome to yet another Saturday night chat session from Indian Occupational Therapist Think Tank. We also want to share that we have launched our website. So if you have not visited yet, please visit IOTTT.org. And so the premise behind this Saturday night chat sessions are everything starts with a discussion. So that's the bottom line. So through this project, we would like to provide a platform for anyone who is passionate and interested about OT in India to discuss the issues or the topics that influence the OT practice and education in India. So we've completed 7 chats so far, and the recordings of all those sessions are available on our YouTube channel. Having said that, please note that this recorded. I welcome all of you to actively participate and contribute to the discussion. So the moderator for this session is our member, our executive committee member, Ms. Ashwini Rao. She's currently in Warsaw, Poland. And since we are already running out of time, without further ado, I'm going to hand over the control to Ashwini. Ashwini, please take over.
Thanks, Karthik. Hello, everyone. So today we have a topic which is quite the buzzword, evidence-based practice, the use of evidence-based practice in OT in India. So I am facilitating this talk today. I am an OT based in Warsaw. I work with international schools. And so this topic has a lot of interest, personal relevance to me as well. But let's get into a wider discussion today about how it's relevant to all. And of course, EBP has its origin in evidence-based medicine. And more than 20 years ago, there was a lot of focus on evidence-based rehabilitation and for different healthcare groups, right? So that's when OT professional associations nationally started producing practice guidelines and position statements, and as a way to sort of encourage practitioners, graduates to embrace this concept of EBP. Now, that has varied a lot globally because the trajectory of OT in different countries has varied, as we all know. And that has obviously influenced to what extent EBP has been embraced. So in some countries, it is a mandate, and some countries are getting there. So what does it mean on the ground for us in reality in India? So we've all practiced in India at some point. So the first sort of reflection question for us to frame this hour ahead is, what does it mean to you as a practitioner? What does EBP mean to you? So the floor is now open for discussion.
Okay, given the silence, let me get started. So I think in my view, EBP means best practice.
Okay.
So I really see that from that angle is like, obviously we have, our field is always growing and widening, and we are kind of like continue to innovate new intervention approaches and stuff. But then like what works, what do not works is very, very important to know. So in my view, evidence-based practice is a way to do best practice.
Karthik just said. Does anybody want to add on?
Well, I would like to add on from what Karthik has said. Yes, it does mean practice, and also I see evidence-based practice as an advocacy for occupational therapy. I mean, just not occupational therapy, but for any healthcare interventions. I see that as an advocacy, and like you talk on behalf of what you do, and it is very important these days, especially I practice in the pediatric area where, we come across a lot of parents on a day-to-day basis. And without EBP, it is not really related to talk about their children health or future intervention or current intervention. So I see EBP a very significant way of advocating what we do.
Great. So it's a tool for advocacy, and it provides power to the profession. It validates us. Any more additions?
I think personally it also validates that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. If we have another person also supporting our intervention, saying like, yeah, you're doing the right thing, this has so much of an effect for what you're doing, or this makes so much more sense than something else. So kind of validating it for our practice.
Okay, thanks, Savita. So we have more guests with us as well. So what does evidence-based practice mean to you as a practitioner, as an educator in India today? Anybody wants to go next? Karthik, Shobna, and Savita have given some of the ideas. So Brinda, if you want to join us, welcome to the conversation, or Cheruba or Murli.
Hi. I just want to say a few things which pushed me towards evidence-based practice. And evidence-based practice is keeping yourself updated, because most of the times what we are taught, I still remember the days where our teachers used to teach us by the handwritten notebooks, what they had, what they studied, and then that notebook used to be the Bible of teaching us for years together, our seniors and juniors. Everybody used to be the same notes. And we used to seriously appreciate it because they took effort in taking notes and then teaching us. But at the same time, maybe we should go beyond it and learn everything new, fresh. At the same time, keeping a tab on our basics and progressing more along in the line is very important. Because I still remember one of my the PG exam days, in Mumbai. I was writing exam. It was on Wilbarger protocol, and the Wilbarger protocol is like on the flow of hair follicles. You're supposed to apply the brushing, and then I think after the theory exam and during the practical exam, they asked me this question like, explain me about Wilbarger, and is there anything updated? Because the day before my practical exam, there was this article which was coming, which was supporting the brushing against the hair follicle growth also. In some cases, of course, there were limitations, but it was also talking about it. It is also important that we keep a tab of things every time, so that it keeps us relevant in the field, and it keeps us to helps us to provide the better care whenever needed. It's not that we have done something wrong. We keep updating ourselves for the betterment of the profession, and that's how we can survive as well.
Thanks, Murli. So techniques change, and to keep us current with what's happening, we need to update us, and it's professional development there. That's what I'm hearing from you. So we have started today's session a little late. So I am probably going to move on to the next spoke of today's discussion, which is, but if anybody else, Rupa or Shripa, if you are waiting to shout out an answer, please let me know. Okay, so the next question is, why does it matter to us? Yes, so it's clearly important from all of you that it's important. We've just deciphered that, but why is it important? Why should we care about it? Some points discuss that, but what from a legislation point of view, or is it from reimbursement point of view? How does that apply to India?
So I'll let the practitioners in India first talk about it, then I will share my perspectives.
Well, from practice a point of view, why is it important? Because it actually health and safety, and you're at least you're aware that what not to do more than what to do. At least you should be aware like what not to do. So it might help you from malpracticing. Like as Murli was mentioning, those days in our colleges we were not very much opened about EVP, or like we will be probably just doing what our seniors or the teachers would say without any much of questioning. But like when you actually practice on the clients, you have the responsibility. So I think if you're good in your EVP, you could be very more confident in your practice, at least to to tell the stakeholders what not to practice than what to practice.
Okay, very important, health and safety, and that we are delivering safe practices. And this brings me to this question around, which is a sub-question really. So is OT covered by insurance? Let's look at pediatrics because most practitioners are in the area. Is it covered?
Well, recently in Tamil Nadu, the government, well, I say recently in the sense before COVID, I say for the last maybe 5-6 years, it has been covered by the government through the uh, chief minister's health insurance scheme, and also there is the central government scheme that is tie up with the CM scheme. It has been covered for children and the families who are unaffordable for therapy, and there are maybe one or
We've,
not that great, like maybe yearly. I think the last time I heard from a medical insurance company is that they cover rupees 1,500 per annum for OT, which is really nothing.
Okay, so that's a positive move from when I was practicing there. So health and safety being one, and legislation here, we are getting into that slowly. That is also another reason. What does Murli have to say? You just raised your hand.
Insurance wise, yes, the chief minister's insurance scheme is there for children with ASD or any other neurodevelopmental disabilities. But at the same time, what happens is there are these corporate companies and the people who are working in the government sector. They have this option of reimbursement. When they come to us, the bill, they ask for a detailed bill where it states what therapy is given for what problem, and then what is the goal set. It was encouraging for me to see the NCPL, I think the National Energy Corporation Limited or something like that, Neyveli Energy Corporation Limited. So they asked for a detailed report of what is the goal set, what you achieved in 3 months and 6 months period. So just today I gave a detailed report to them, and then they really appreciated it. But the thing is, they have this capping. Every month, what is to be reimbursed, they have this capping. And I think reimbursement is what is majorly working in India more than insurance. Um, Other than the chief minister's insurance scheme, I don't see anything else. But I have heard there is one insurance scheme under Star Health which provides insurance benefits for children with neurodevelopmental disabilities. But I haven't seen it in person, so I just only heard about it. I'm not sure about the scheme.
So coming back to outcomes there, so that means the reports include outcomes that what you're doing is working, and so we're looking at evidence there, and that has to be documented and provided. So this is a significant step, I think. So many practitioners must be required to do that. So that brings in evidence in terms of our assessments, evidence in terms of what we are doing, the intervention and the prognosis. So all of that comes into the picture. So so that is why we should care, right? Because this is the time where we want insurance, we want reimbursement, and we want to continue that. It needs to be sustained. So anybody else on the ground in India would like to add their thoughts about why we should care? Okay, so so we have valid reasons we should care, clearly.
I think
Karthik, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to share my perspective to this point of why should we care about evidence-based practice, especially in Indian OT practice and education. I know obviously, like as we just discussed, more than 90% of the reimbursements for OT services are out of pocket, right? So basically, as long as you're able to convince the client that you're providing a valuable service, you're going to get the money for the service that you render. So because of that lack of third-party involvement, again, obviously the need for documentation is also very less, which is again, kind of like obviously even in countries where documentation is very, very critical, like, in the Western context, people are like trying to find shortcut ways to do the documentation because they see that as a burden. And also there's a lot of challenges in engaging the EBP, like evidence-based practice, because lack of time, lack of access to the resources and evidence, lack of access to research database, lack of skill set and ability to appraise the evidence. So many factors comes into play, even in a country where, most of the reimbursement are through third-party payers, where documentation is very critical. If you really apply the scenario to the Indian OT practice, where at this point in time, given that most of the reimbursements are out of pocket and there is not a critical need to document or services. So at this point in time, in my view, it is more the practitioner's inclination towards evidence-based practice. If the practitioner is more inclined to use the evidence in practice and want to do a good service or deliver best practice to their clients, they are the ones at least like trying to learn about EBP, try to develop their skill set and do something. But if you really look at the broader picture, I think we have a long way to go when it comes to the Indian OT context. So like when third-party payments are become more prevalent, I think that will give a push for EBP, because obviously people need to put things on paper. And they are accountable for what they write on a paper, right? So obviously then they will be like, they won't write everything or anything they wish, because they definitely have to have some sort of an evidence backup to what they write. So that will give a push for evidence-based practice. And also I think from the educational standpoint, we really need to educate the the future workforce in terms of how to appraise the evidence. A skill set is very, very critical. And so it's like how to search for an article, on a database, how to do a literature search, literature review, how to appraise the evidence, how to extract information from an article. So all those things need to be taught as well, from the education standpoint. And one thing that I want to add is that if you really look at the world's evidence-based trajectory versus India's, we are 20 years lagging. Like the evidence-based topic, everything emerged. If you really look at the global scenario, we could see that the terms evidence-based medicine and evidence-based practice since 1970s, versus in India, it's only from 1990s forward. So we're kind of lagging behind even in the major medical world as well. So I think we need to first of all contribute and add to the evidence. I don't know whether I'm jumping ahead of some of your questions, but I just want to share while it occurred to me. But I think we need to first generate more evidence. We need to obviously educate the current workforce as well as the future workforce on how to do evidence-based practice, how to appraise the evidence. And the most critical thing is, a lot of people do think that evidence-based practice is all about research evidence, but it's a conglomeration of research evidence plus practitioners' experience plus patients' needs and values and stuff. So they need to really understand the EBP in that broader context, and they need to give due consideration to all those components. Just because evidence says one thing and the patient doesn't want that intervention, we cannot force that intervention to the patient. So that's one thing. On the same time, being a practitioner like Murali or Shravana ma'am, they've been a practitioner for like 2 decades already. So definitely with their experience, despite the evidence say otherwise, they might think that, oh, this intervention works with this sector of population, with this population. I know that by heart, right? So I think that also needs to be like their practitioners' expertise and experience should also be taken into consideration and count that as an internal evidence in addition to the research evidence. Thank you.
The wealth of strong contributions there, Karthik. Thank you. You brought a very important point, actually, which we should have probably summed up with the previous reflection point. It is not just research, taking the research and putting it. We have to look at what the client's needs are. And that is a big thing which should drive our interventions, but should also drive questions that is for us ahead. clinical questions that are going to come for us. We need to think of it from that perspective. So I wonder if students, I don't know if the curriculum, to what extent EBP is involved in UG curriculum right now, but I wonder if students do understand this, the broader picture about, including their expertise, clinical expertise and patient perspectives. Yes, Savita.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Karthik said, that it is very easy to get sidetracked with just the raw data and ignore a lot of other components, because human research is not that clean and straightforward in black and white, because every client we have has a whole array of contributors to their health that we cannot generalize with the evidence that we find. So I think just gathering our own data and creating our own evidence base, I think for the data collection strategies, I think is part of, like, a big part of evidence-based practice, right? How do we collect data for our interventions? Is it making a difference? Are we doing the same thing routinely without any valid changes in our practitioners, in our clients? So I think that is another big component that our education system has to emphasize. Even here, I think this is a very recent thing, keeping data. And if insurance wasn't asking for it, I don't think many practitioners would be keeping the data needed and sound data to show that our interventions, and to be able to reflect on that and to see how is it really impacting our clients is very important.
Yeah. And while legislation and reimbursement, all that may be a factor, that prompts us to think of the research and include it in our practice, there is a point there about, individual motivation as well. It has to be a self-serving reason. And the self-serving reason is when we all got in, whether we all thought, okay, this is a helping profession, right? So are we doing the best? So that is probably the crux, and that should possibly be a guiding factor, and not just external motivators of reimbursement and legislation. So on the ground, I think at the moment, so while we're looking at, okay, why should it matter? And we sort of went into some of the practices that we need to facilitate it, which was, student education, undergraduate education, critical skills, appraisal skills, research skills. So before we get into barriers, let's look at it from a strengths perspective. What is facilitating EBP at the moment? Some of you are already talking about it, you're doing it. So what is helping you do that at the moment?
One thing which you've already mentioned, that motivation, self-motivation. So, like if you're a person who is very passionate about your profession, I think like you look for the, what all the facilitators gonna help to for your own profession upgrading. So one is self motivation. The other factor would be the team members. So especially when you work in a multidisciplinary team, like you are obliged to have some sort of evidence-based practice in order to communicate and collaborate with other members, and in a way that you are facilitating their EBP and vice versa, And especially when you work in a private setup like myself, where you need to connect with the doctors or the psychiatrist, whether doesn't matter whether they're referred or not referred, like you need to send a report, like if the child is going for a review to the doctor. So it makes a point that you need to be strong enough in saying like what the child has undergone, and what is his level right now and how was it before, and so without any evidence I cannot just describe the child. So I guess like those days have gone, maybe, or I'm not very sure, like I'm talking about from my practice, and but in general I think that should be what do you say, like you should get involved in such a practice. And of course it is self motivation, but then in a way that you get along with the system, especially when you practice yourself, other than your own team, like when you want to extend your services to the other members, it does actually need all these sort of changes.
So I'm hearing it's a shared responsibility. Many of us work in private practice in India, and so it becomes a responsibility to influence each other and to support each other so we can grow together as a collective. But the onus is on the individual really to drive that forward. And also you briefly touched on confidence to put it down, document it, and present it. From referral sources. That was also touched on. Great points there. Does anybody have anything to add? Karthik?
So Ashwini, from the strengths perspective, looking at the Indian context, in my view, fortunately, there are some free research databases like Google Scholar, and a bunch of articles on PubMed is also like the free full text are available and stuff. So one is availability of free research databases, and the usage of internet has grown quite significantly in India. And also, I think off late the universities have catch up now. So most of the students are using their laptop to complete their assignments, and like during their compared to when we studied, nowadays I think there is more usage of computers and stuff like that. So I think I see them as strengths. And also another strength that I see is in terms of generating evidence for practice. Fortunately, like since I think from the time we started this baccalaureate degree in OT, we asked the students to do a project. So all the BOT and MOT students are doing a project, and I know that's a great way. Like as long if we start like asking meaningful questions and then like try to complete the projects on questions that would help the day-to-day practice, it would be really a good way to generate. So I see that as a strength, because that requirement of completing a project is a strength to build evidence, and availability of free databases is another strength. And what else is a strength for EVP in India? The journal, of course, is free. The iJart is free, and several other journals, in the Asian world is also free, to access. But the only point that we need to ensure is that, do the students know where to look for the evidence, how to look for the evidence? So that skill set is that I think I'll put that in the barrier side. The strengths perspective, I think I will say the requirement for completing a project is a strength, and availability of free databases and full text articles is a strength as well.
Okay, two important points: accessibility and requirements to do a research project in the OT program. So there are some individual factors which are facilitators. Kriba? Yes. So very quickly, there are individual factors and there are contextual factors. We've touched on both. Kriba, please add to the conversation.
Yeah, it's just the two things that I want to add that I see as strength when we are practicing evidence. One, awareness. When I come, there are very much people who are talking about evidence-based practice, or I wasn't aware. So the more we talk, the more we stress on the importance of evidence-based practice, people are actually looking. Another thing is doing a master's degree actually changes the perspective of how you see OT as. Because in the bachelor's degree, people still like contemplate of what they're doing, if they're doing the right thing. But when you read a lot and start looking into articles, which they do in masters, people actually practice evidence-based practice when they do a master's degree. I've seen my own students when I was working in India coming up with several articles and saying, "Ma'am, this seemed to be effective, so I'm going to try it on this patient." So I feel like these two things adds a strength. So the more we talk about evidence-based practice and having a master's degree, again, it kind of like, I would say, support doing the evidence-based practice.
Great, Kripa. Yeah. So you talked about awareness. The awareness is happening, and it needs to continue to make this a strength, to make this happen, and for people to embrace it. And you also touched on education, that it provides skills so that a person is able to go and search the literature in a relevant manner and apply it. Shobna?
Yes, add to what Kripa has just mentioned, that is a very good point. That the students from the master's program are more aware of their evidence-based practice. But I think we should think about having these awareness, or maybe the skill should be these students should get it from their bachelors. So you should not wait till you go to the masters. Obviously, not all the students are going to do their masters immediately after their bachelor degree. So I think we seriously need to look about like what about in the bachelor degree in India.
Okay. So yes, PG does provide the skills to embrace EBP a little bit more, but we need to look into it a little earlier for it to become a sort of a culture. At the moment, there is a project requirement in undergraduate projects, but there isn't like a module on research methods. Would I be right in saying that?
So in the Tamil Nadu MGR Medical University, when I was a student, there was a research methodology course.
Okay. I don't recall having research methods at all, even though there was a requirement to do a project around 2002, 2003.
I mean, it was not like a research methodology per se. It's more like a biostatistical course where we like learned about different research methodology and stuff.
I think that's a very important point Shobana made there. We need to introduce students to research skills early in the undergraduate program itself and not wait until PG, because people may take different paths in their career. So doing that early is important also because when they're entering the profession, they start with the skills to start documenting. They start with the skills to think of research as an activity that they can do too. So that's the point I see over there that Shobna just made. Welcome to Ms. Shailaja, and was there somebody else? Ms. Shailaja, please, you're welcome to turn your camera on if you're comfortable doing so, and unmute yourself and contribute if that's possible. We're talking about what are the strengths that support practitioners for evidence-based practice in India at the moment. I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was intermittently in, so I did not hear what you asked me. Sorry.
So what are the strengths that, what are the factors that support practitioners in practicing in an evidence-based way in India at the moment? How is it relevant to you? What are your facilitators for EBP?
Actually, I'm the faculty in the medical college in occupational therapy. So we do refer a lot of evidence-based research, and we do try even educating our students how to use the research and how to implement it. But to be very frank, till now it's hardly very less awareness about using evidence-based practice in India. We are trying to inculcate that thought and that culture, but still there is very less implementation of it.
And I have a question about, so what is the role of educators and academic institutions in promoting EBP? You're the first point of contact for the OT community per se in India. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, to brief you about it, like this awareness is more in the in the institutes where postgraduate education is being given. And this postgraduate education, in postgraduate education, we do have a major this topic on evidence-based practice and then clinical reasoning based on that to find out the evidence-based practice. But till now, the undergraduate students are not that much aware, since it is not a part of a curriculum which we are trying to implement now. And when I visited many institutes for inspection, for our association inspection, I realized that the new generation teachers, they are really interested in it and they are implementing this practice.
Okay. So it sounds like we need more uniformity in terms of a more formal introduction early.
Yeah.
How early is good in your opinion as an experienced educator?
I just can't give you the exact time frame, but it is changing. The practice in India is changing, and we being the first point of contact, we also are trying to facilitate the research in undergraduate students so that they will understand the importance of the evidence-based practice and how the research make the changes when you implement the certain type of intervention in the students.
Okay. So that's positive in that we're all thinking about it at the undergraduate level and clearly stressing on the importance of it. I just looked at the time there and we do have very little time. So let us move to this question on, okay, so we have strengths, but what are the biggest barriers? Research skills, critical appraisal was one. And sorry, Murli, you wanted to say something.
Hey, I'm just going to touch upon the previous point as well as what you just mentioned. Yes, the initial point of contact is in the UG, and some of the universities have research methodology in their curriculum, and it's good. In the UG level, they are learning about the research documentation of data, and the PG level, they are a bit more into the research. But what happens is, the follow-up factor. There needs to be a mentor who encourages and you pushes, and there has to be a teamwork. If I work with the team, take me for an instance, I get inspired by Karthik and Suresh and Lakshman. I keep pushing myself towards it because I learn from them a lot on the research aspect, and I'm going forward. But did I have that same kind of enthusiasm immediately after my UG or immediately after my PG, which I lacked in the college? Yes, there were my teachers who would teach me, who would guide me and help me. After that, somewhere my enthusiasm drops out. I drop connecting with them, or the institutes stop connecting with me after I pass out in the research aspect wise. Recently what's happening is there is a lot of collaboration work happening with the alumni, the seniors and juniors and the faculties. This is the new trend now. The positive point is everybody starts connecting now. Everybody wants to be in research and taking a step forward. The negative aspect is this aspect of all of the professionals and the mentors reaching out to the younger ones and then pulling them along in the research process needs to be encouraged and pushed forward from both aspects. The seniors needs to come down to the juniors, and as well as we as juniors, we need to reach out to the seniors. See, in here, I'm not mentioning about the age or the number of years of experience. It's just the knowledge factor I'm mentioning as seniors and juniors. So I completely respect everybody with knowledge factor there, and I'm benefiting a lot because I'm collaborating or I'm reaching out to people, and there are people who are giving me hand and pulling me along. So this has to, or this kind of situation has to be given to all the people or all the interested students, so there are more researchers, more evidence-based practice can happen because they create their own evidences in their practice.
Okay.
Which is where
thanks, Murli. I'm just going to come in there just briefly because you've made an excellent point, and we can talk about this actually for many hours, I think, but excellent point there about collaborating and connecting and mentorship. And it's both ways, from seniors and from young novice graduates as well. Since we're talking about barriers here, So the barrier there is connections and work settings to a certain extent. Research is one. What else is there? Are we missing something else? Karthik, yeah.
Okay. So again, from the barriers perspective, looking at the evidence-based practice in the Indian context, the first thing that strikes out to me is the availability of evidence per se. Do we have enough quality evidence, culturally relevant evidence that we can appraise on to identify, to use that to make our practice decisions is a big question. Of course, we know we are generating research, but how much relevant to the day-to-day practice is one question that we need to ask. And second thing is the quality of evidence. So, in my view, I may be biased or I may be wrong, or others may feel differently. But in my view, at this point in time, if I look at the evidence that's available to, related to OT practice in India, we are still can only do some sort of a scoping review. We can map out what's been going on, but rather than going to that systematic review level of evidence is still lagging, because if you really were to do a systematic review with the available studies, then obviously most of the studies will be in the lower rung of the evidence ladder, like very low quality evidence, and that kind of makes the findings very weaker as well. So if you were to really base your practice decisions on that evidence, the quality of evidence becomes an issue. So in my view, again, the lack of high quality and culturally relevant evidence needs to be looked at. That's one of the big limitations. And also the skill set, which I mentioned earlier. Of course, I'm glad to know from Shailaja ma'am and from others here that it's growing. The inclination towards evidence-based practice is growing. That's great, fantastic to know. And Murali made a valid point that we need to collaborate more to impart that skill set in education. So I think once we impart that skill set through education on how to engage in evidence-based practice, how to appraise evidence, how to look for evidence, that'll be another thing. So right now, I think that skill set is a barrier. And external factors, like, again, right now, as I mentioned, in the beginning of this call, that at this point in time, only if a practitioner wants to engage in evidence-based practice, that self-motivation, that inclination is the only factor that encourages them to do so. All the other external factors like reimbursement or legislation or other factors, are not yet there. I think if those factors will also come into picture, that will push the evidence-based practice forward in the Indian context, is another view. And even as I said, even the developing countries, if there is a lack of motivation, lack of reinforcement of why they need to do this, they won't do it. Like, because everybody is comfortable with a routine, they come and do their job every day, document everything. Unless there is a requirement, unless there is a demand, it is to just kind of do the usual thing and move forward. So I think and another factor is obviously time is always a biggest barrier, because in order to engage in evidence-based practice, you need to put in that extra time to appraise the evidence and to appraise it and look at the big picture and clinical reason. So in addition to your intervention time, you need to dedicate that extra time to do all these stuff. So I think when the external reimbursement players come into picture and OT services are well reimbursed at a good rate, then I think the practice will be more open to, because say, for example, if I'm pulling in Shobana ma'am or Murali sir to just kind of go and you have to do evidence-based practice, and then like they have this 45-minute session with the client and they need to spend another 30 minutes, who is going to reimburse for the 30 minutes? Of course, they are self-motivated, they're going to do it, they're not going to ask for money, but I'm just kind of like telling that, time and value for time is also an important factor to consider. So once we gain more recognition for OT services and OT outcomes, when people start valuing OT services and ready to pay for more, then I think that will give that extra time investment to engage in evidence-based practice. So time is another limitation or barrier in my view. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Using evidence-based practice in India becomes more difficult because of the cultural factor as well. We know that in every section in India, even the culture differs. To some extent, the culture differs. That's why the practices also differ. So whatever is implemented in Mumbai, I cannot say that this can be implemented in the rural parts inside. So the major barrier of using evidences in the of which are available in the done from the other country, it's very difficult to implement it over here, because the contextual reference, when it comes, it becomes difficult to implement. So that factor also should be considered. So we should encourage the research from the various parts of India, so that we can build up the evidence for further interventions.
Very valid
Wonderful
point.
points.
Totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
I think
Certainly. And one
Savita had
factor,
her.
one barrier that I would add to the list is the linguistic barrier, because most of the available evidence are in English, right? And then we are a linguistically diverse country, and I think
Yes.
if the evidence are also available in other languages, that may be able to help practitioners to appraise evidence better. Thank you.
Wonderful points. Savita just wanted to say something there too.
Yeah, just kind of related to that. I feel like our profession, given the varied nature of our, our knowledge base, I think we should not shy away from tapping into like social work research, psychology research, all those areas of practice that have been there ahead of our times, and handling the same situation, same problems in the society. So I think collaborating with them to create an evidence base, as well as tapping into their existing evidence, I think will be very supportive for our practice in India. I think we are very predominantly very medical in our approaches. And I think deviating a little bit more from that and looking at how social work is addressing mental health issues. How are they addressing those challenges? So those would be very helpful in our practice. I think education is so much more research in special education when it comes to skill sets, because before OT, or even when OT was, we're a very small profession, right, compared to the educators, and they have a lot of research already there, and we should tap into those evidences and apply it to, and it'll be more relevant to our practice than looking into OT research or just medical research outside the country.
Perfect. The thread of thought there is relevance of existing high quality research and the relevance of it to our cultural context, and to use the power of collaboration with other professionals outside of the OT community to see how that can be put to work on the ground. I think you explained that so well. Shobna, please come in.
Yeah, all those were very important and very, very valuable points made so far. And I would just like to add on a little bit. Here, we should also look at how we connect with the government sectors, because we do understand that there is lack in evidence, there is lack in awareness. However, there are lots of schemes available in the government sector. If you could go and look into the public health and for children's services, and there are enormous of funding had been used by many organizations. However, we don't have the bridge to connect with these people, and I could take Savita's note there. We need to collaborate with other members, and we need to make that connection. It is not possible to make evidence-based practice happening in India. Just we work among ourselves. But we have to come out of the shell and have the connection with other parties, and move with them. Like say, for example, researching with the other professionals, researching or publishing with the other professionals is very important, rather just as OTs, talk about OT interventions and move on. I think we should look in that way also.
Exactly. That's a great point there. And there's a lot of there's an underutilization of government schemes that is already there, and we need to tap into that. Lots of learning there. So we've just discussed barriers. Another point here that I personally feel is that, it ties in with mentorship. Things like professional supervision, even if we are working in private practice, even if we are not attached to a university, utilizing professional supervision to reflect on what we are doing. Sometimes we need to structure that and formalize that. And I think that is a huge missing component. Individual motivation needs to be enhanced through some of those methods. Coming to, okay, barriers, yes, but there's so many things that we can already do. We've talked about that. But if we can identify 3 key points while we are going towards wrapping up today's session, 3 key points to improve things, besides what we all have discussed, from the point of view of academics, from the point of view of practitioners, what would that be? I welcome Ms. Sophia Azad to contribute to the discussion as well. I think you've had connection issues.
Thank you so much, Ashwini. Yeah, I've just joined, so I'm going to listen today. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, anyone for the floor?
I think the first thing we need to do is like generate culturally relevant evidence to support OT practice in India. So generating evidence is the first factor. And if you want me to tell 3 things, then I would say empowering the skill set among the practitioners and students would be the second thing. Third is obviously I would go with Murali's view of collaborating and mentorship would be a third thing that we could do. And obviously eventually we need to do more advocacy. We need to bring in third-party payers to reimburse OT services. All those things are down the ladder. The first 3 things in my view: generate evidence, empower the skill set of doing evidence-based practice, collaborate, and provide mentorship.
Perfect. And with reference to generating evidence, I think there was recently an article led by Suresh and Karthik about research priorities in India, and like how we need to diversify research. So that is already there. So there is a path that is being laid. We just need our young graduates to sort of get onto that track there. And we have people like Ms. Shailaja, Ms. Sophia, who are also hopeful about this and are already taking steps to promote EBP. So we hopefully can generate evidence towards that. But I think touching on how early we start imparting research skills, it's never too early, because it's not that we'd start research methods as a module, but we can always start critical thinking early in UG, and that is probably the key component for thinking about what is the clinical question and how can we generate literature for that question. So critical thinking, in my opinion, is probably where it starts early in UG. Imparting it through different sources. So currently research is mostly it's disseminated in the conferences, right? But how can we collaborate, and how can we bring educators and practitioners together? So what could be kind of real practical ways of doing that? Can we get 2 ideas there, please? Murli and Shobna.
Yeah, one way we get the connection through the clinical placements. So the students from the universities come over to the clinical practice where we have the connection, and we talk a lot about evidence-based practice and and a lot of documentation sharing between the university and the placement providers. So that is one way that I see that you could promote evidence-based practice even at the UG level. And there are obviously more. And I also would like to add that sometimes students at the very young age, like they are very scared of the terms research and evidence. So I think it is very important for the educators to make sure, give the assurance that it, not to make it that scary, like at least, of course, research is scary even now at this age for me. However, like if it is a little bit friendly in nature, maybe how simplified that you could do it for the UG graduation, probably that would facilitate more in their own practice.
Absolutely. And
I would like to contribute over here what Shobana has suggested. our university, even Sophie will agree with it. Our university has started taking a step towards it. Like university has started a summer vacation courses or summer vacation camps where they are really taking the students to the rural areas or at the interior of the city, where they get the mentors and they facilitate the research related to every person's field. Like my one of my student is now enrolled for doing a research on the urban healthcare practices and its scope in occupational therapy. So if such type of projects are being taken by the university, it will encourage the students more, because they get the chance to mix with the other, like collaborate or get the knowledge exchange with other faculties also, and this facilitates the research interest in them. This is what I have experienced, because the student which we have sent is collaborating, like contacting me and taking guidance from me. So I was very happy when university announced such type of schemes. So
That is wonderful.
Shobhana has rightly said, yeah, at the university level you should start, so that student won't get scared of the research as such.
Yeah. De-escalate the fear. Thank you for sharing that excellent point. I also quickly wanted to add that, the educators on the placement, on the fieldwork side, and academics, making that connection. So, for example, the educator regularly visiting the placement site and, being that bridge between, because as clinical educators, they may also need more information or support in terms of how to practice EBP, and they are shaping the students' thought process as well during that placement. So that link probably needs more structure as well. Murli, please go ahead.
Murli, you're muted.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. I'm going to echo the same point as Shailaja ma'am and Shobhana ma'am mentioned. The clinical postings and interacting with the practitioners other than the college faculty will help a lot in this case. And yes, the college and the private practice needs to collaborate, because the college faculty will have lots in their head when it comes to teaching and taking care of college work, and taking the practical aspects in the field would be more apt for the clinical practitioner. So this balance between both needs to be struck, and it will go very well. I can state that because in the UG or even in the PG level, what the students' mentality is, just get over with doing the project and just finish the project. And sometimes even as faculty, the project is going to take more time or more time consuming or lots of client load, then we might not encourage it. Recently, one of the child, we were discussing about the project. Oh, I'm no more his teacher, but still, we are in touch. When he came with an idea of something which cannot be done by a project in the college, because that's in a huge scale. Then what we did is we started going out, and then I told him to go reach out to the incubation center. Now he has a patent. He's a final year student. He has a patent on his name, and that's on the university, and they are going to do a different project later. And he also have a sanction of 1.5 lakh from the Tamil Nadu government for his patent. So, and with that, there is somebody who is sitting next to him. That person contributed an idea which is not there in the practice as of now. We checked it. So we are in the process of filing another research topic or idea as registering that idea, and then we are going to make something and then patent it. But this time I'm taking the credit, because I'm going to be one of the author in that. I'm not going to give away to the college. So that's why I'm mentioning this, is somebody being there and then just providing the help, because the kids are scared. They might not know what to do, but they have lots of ideas. When this boy came to me with this idea, I was like mind blown. I don't want to spill out what we are doing, but it will definitely come out, and it's going to be a game changer in the field of OT.
That's very commendable, Murli. So So there's very rich contributions from all of you here today. From my perspective, I have exhausted my questions. But if there is something that somebody wants to add or comment, you're very welcome. Yes, please, Ms. Sophia.
Yeah. Actually, now this MBBS curriculum, they have made it according to the CBME. They are now calling it CBME, that is competency-based medical education. So on similar lines, if the occupational therapy syllabus is also drafted, and if that is because now even PT people are also doing the same thing, physiotherapy, CBME based. And this as according to the new policies, the NEP and all that, we have to change our course of giving the education and more amount of you can say practical aspects and research. Of course, research is very, very important, and to develop the evidence-based practice and all. So we have to be more forthcoming with the new ideas or the changing technologies also, like AI and disruptive technology and IoT and all that. So my thing is that in occupational therapy, how can we include all those things, and to draft a new syllabus, because already what we are now using in MUHS, that is Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, last we drafted it in 2015, and now it's almost you can say 7-8 years. So we need to draft a new which will be more universal and applicable, because in India, like applicable to all the other states also. So Shailaja madam, can you comment on this? Hello, Shailaja ma'am.
Yeah, right. Right. Actually, the evidence-based, that competency-based syllabus is making lot of difference. As Sophia, we know that like we have started one step towards it, but yeah, we know that all the faculties will need to do a lot of contribute a lot towards it, and then. I think the whatever syllabus we have read in MBBS, they are like they are trying to implement this research attitude right from first year, and so that step by step it is developing their abilities as a researcher, which also we should also take up, and I hope all the universities are taking the step towards it. Thank you.
Karthik has a question for this Fred.
Yeah, just to add to that, I'm glad to know that the India, the OT medical education India is moving towards a competency-based framework. And at this juncture, I also gladly would like to share that IOTTT is currently doing a project mapping the OT curriculum across the world to develop some sort of a competency-based framework, which would be definitely a value addition to the education community in India. So I just want to share that. Thank you.
That's brilliant.
Oh, that's really
Karthik.
Great. Yeah.
That would be very nice.
Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Karthik. We'll
Dr.
require
Karthik,
your,
if you can really help us, yeah, really,
yes, Karthik.
please.
That'll be great.
So competency-based curriculum, so essential. So we want the graduates who are entering the profession to have core competencies in EBP, and because that is a missing gap as it seems right now. So that's what I'm hearing. There are steps towards that. So that's wonderful. Many programs have changed to entry-level masters to reflect this change to reflect this need, isn't it? So that students are more ready for EBP. So this might take some time, but at least we are on that path there. This has been a good. What do you think, Karthik? Do you think we should wrap up, or how are we time?
Yes. Oh, we just kind of 5 minutes past an hour, so I think we should begin wrapping up in a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for.
If there is any last minute news or anything.
Yeah. Any last comments or thoughts before I thank you all?
Thank you.
Just that I want to thank Shailaja ma'am and Sophia ma'am for bringing out, being here, even their busy schedule, and providing us with valuable inputs.
So thank you everyone
all. Thank
for your
you all for
contributions.
contributing. Yeah. all young
Thank you so much.
generation contributing towards it. It's really encouraging even to us as a faculty. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Miss. Thank you, Miss Sophia, Miss Shailaja. Please, please continue joining us for these conversations.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sure,
Absolutely.
sure. Thank you.
So I'd like
We
to
will
thank
also tell
everybody
others,
on the call.
other teachers also to join in. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
Yes,
that would be
please
great.
do. That would be really good because we really need the connection from the university faculty. Just
Yeah.
talking among ourselves, we probably at some stage like we get stuck. So if we have connections like yourself and Sophia ma'am, it would be really good. Thank you so much.
At this stage, I would just like to say, like what we have discussed just now, can we start making some small committees which will and give them certain amount of work to do, like you do for this particular subject or that particular subject, so that we can start preparing that CBME based curriculum. So, what do you think about it?
I'm going to open this to the floor. This question.
It's a great idea. So obviously, as I mentioned, we are currently pursuing a project on the topic. It's a task force within IOTTT members is kind of doing it, and eventually we want to, once we have some sort of draft framework ready, we want input from the educator community on all the stakeholders, and please look forward to some of our communications in the near future. Where we would really appreciate everyone's input on how to improvise it or what to add, what to remove, and stuff like that. So we really we are looking forward to your comments, the educator community's comment, the students community's input as well. So all stakeholders, we are looking forward to it. But again, we are in the probably 20 to 30% down the road in the project. So we'll keep you posted. But that's a great suggestion going forward. Again, in my view, so that's why we are posting this on YouTube, is we want to continue the conversation. So, for any of you here on the call or, eventually your colleagues, if they want to watch this recording and want to opine their input in the comment thread, so that we can continue the conversation, through the comment section. And there, we can certainly we can post that, okay, we are now looking for volunteers to join this committee. We'll post that in that YouTube thread, and you can volunteer yourself, and then we can form a committee. So we'll definitely, that's a great idea. We'll explore the feasibility for the same. Thank you.
Please follow the website, Sophia ma'am and Ms. Shailaja, because there will be updates on that. So please do follow that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for contributing so richly, and I hope you all have gained valuable points from this, and it's provoked thoughts, and it's going to leave you thinking more. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a good evening, and we'll see you at the next Saturday night chat. So Karthik,
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. I'm going to end the call for everyone. So wherever you are, have the good rest of the day. Take care. Bye-bye. And we look forward to you all for the next session as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.